A solitary moon drifted in the emptiness beyond its parent planet, its pockmarked surface bearing witness to millennia of celestial bombardment. Once ridiculed as a barren wasteland, this moon had become the linchpin in humanity's struggle for survival. No lush forests swayed in breezes here, nor did shimmering seas reflect the light of a distant sun. Sharp ridges and endless craters dominated the landscape, all veiled by an eternal hush that pervaded the thin, tenuous atmosphere. Yet, in that quiet realm, a fortress now stood against the encroaching might of an empire whose ambition knew no limits. 1 generation earlier, humanity had narrowly escaped extinction. The Targan Empire had cast its shadow upon Earth's interstellar colonies, strangling them one by one with blockades and raids. The Empire's war machine was fueled by an unmatched hunger for resources and territory. Entire civilizations had already fallen, and the fate awaiting humanity seemed sealed. In desperation, the allied human world scanned every remote outpost, every asteroid belt, and every lifeless rock in the star-spun void, searching for a location that could serve as a final redoubt. They needed something easily overlooked, near enough to strategic routes to be defensible, yet so starkly inhospitable that their enemies would never guess what lay beneath the surface. The dusty moon had only been catalogued as XM432, its name a mere string of letters and numbers. Early scouting missions found that while it possessed neither lush resources nor the faintest glow of indigenous life, it did have something else: sturdy rock formations stretching for miles beneath its crust. Engineers theorized that these layers could support massive subterranean construction projects. What began as a faint glimmer of hope soon escalated into the largest clandestine undertaking in human history. Over 200,000 workers, soldiers, engineers, miners, and scientists arrived in waves that slipped under the Empire's radar, laboring around the clock in total secrecy. The raw materials came from nearby asteroid belts, delivered under the guise of routine freighters carrying low-grade ore. To keep the smokescreens plausible, some cargo even made stops at legitimate mining colonies. Each shipment then stealthily made its way to XM432, and an underground city began to take shape. Schematic after schematic was drawn up, tested, discarded, or refined. With every drilling operation, vast caverns were hollowed out, their walls reinforced with layers of newly formulated alloy, designed to absorb and dissipate energy blasts. Specialized sensors and camouflaged arrays were woven into the rock itself, turning each tunnel and room into a hidden strongpoint. The entire place would be an invisible fortress that, in theory, was invulnerable to the Targan's known weaponry. Over time, watchtowers emerged above the surface, each concealed behind elaborate illusions of natural rock formations. Subterranean hangars housed a newly developed fleet of fighters designed for short-range but powerful attacks, outfitted with advanced cloaking capabilities. To power these systems, fusion reactors lay deeply embedded beneath layers of protective plating, ensuring that not a single stray energy signature escaped. Sophisticated computer networks handled day-to-day life support, maintaining temperature control and oxygen recycling. All who toiled there knew they were building more than just a military outpost. They were crafting humanity's last hope. Morale was a hidden fault line, wavering under the constant pressure. Fear kept people awake through the inky nights. Work that had to be carried out silently often weighed heavy, especially in the claustrophobic hush of subterranean passages. Sometimes, the younger recruits yearned for the open air of more hospitable colonies, fantasizing about azure skies or bustling cityscapes. The seasoned veterans, their faces drawn and eyes hardened by countless battles, served as a grim reminder of what awaited them if they failed. Yet, amid the friction, a sense of unity bridged the generational divide. Every man, woman, and child on XM432 knew that if this bastion fell, so too would the future of humanity. As the fortress neared completion, the effort shifted to armaments. Experimental railguns, each the size of a skyscraper, were installed in hidden shafts that could slide open at a moment's notice. Missile platforms, disguised by sliding rock panels, were loaded with warheads capable of homing in on even the most elusive Targan warships. Meanwhile, the energy shield enveloping the moon was engineered to remain dormant until activated, its existence masked from scans by a clever array of decoy signals. If triggered, the shield would form a near-impenetrable dome, rendering orbital bombardments useless. Even the most technologically advanced Targan vessels would find it difficult to penetrate. Simultaneously, diplomats from the allied human worlds continued their futile attempts to negotiate peace with the Empire. A Targan response, a holly brushed-off proposal each time, revealed that they intended to bring humanity to heel by force. And so the fortress on Exum 432 became the unspoken promise of defiance. If negotiation failed, they would resist with every bit of might they had. Yet the Targan Empire's intelligence network was notoriously vast. Despite all the precautions, whispers of a hidden stronghold occasionally surfaced, though no concrete evidence ever reached those in power. The Empire's high command dismissed stray rumors, for in their arrogance, they could not fathom that a single moon might stand in their way. When the Targan warships arrived in orbit around Earth without warning, they believed it was the final step in their subjugation of humanity. Earth's fleet was small and scattered, forced to retreat by waves of Targan dreadnoughts. Panic choked Earth's population, and the Allied forces fell back from key positions, following a predetermined plan: lure the Empire's formidable armada away from Earth, guiding them down hyperlanes toward a certain unassuming moon. The Targan admirals, thinking they were cornering the last pockets of resistance, gave chase. With each jump, the Targan war machine moved further from Earth, stepping straight into the trap humanity had painstakingly prepared. Upon entering the star system, where XM432 awaited, Targan scouts reported minimal signs of activity. Indeed, sensors detected only a minor asteroid mining operation. The admirals, emboldened, deployed ground troops to secure the surface, expecting a negligible fight. The first wave of shuttles dropped gracefully onto the dusty terrain, squads of Targan soldiers fanning out to gather intelligence. They found no multifaceted alien cities or advanced fortifications. Nothing but desolation. The troops reported in, perplexed. Then, as if from the bowels of the moon itself, a shrill alarm pierced the silence. Huge panels of rock slid back, revealing the railguns. Missiles erupted from hidden launchers, their trails momentarily illuminating the airless gloom. Above, Targan ships barely had time to raise shields before the first barrage hammered their hulls. Meticulous planning made each shot count. The initial volley crippled 2 battleships outright and damaged countless more. Shuttles parked on the moon's surface were consumed by brilliant bursts of plasma. Targan soldiers on the ground scrambled for cover, but the dust and rock offered little haven. Within seconds, the moon's surface came alive with defenses, automated turrets emerging from the craters and ridges, raining lethal fire on stunned invaders. The Targan fleet attempted an aggressive orbital strike. Yet, the moment their weapon systems locked onto the moon, a shimmering barrier enveloped its entire circumference. Brilliant arcs of energy scattered across the dome, dissipating the Targan bombardment. The Empire's warships pounded the shield with everything they had, but their salvos accomplished little more than lighting up an impenetrable aurora. Meanwhile, the fortress below kept up its relentless counterattack. Each railgun's tungsten slug hammered Targan capital ships with terrifying force, sometimes shattering them outright or sending them spiraling into collisions with their own flotilla. In desperation, Targan ground troops attempted to breach the fortress from below, setting specialized charges to blast through the moon's crust. But the Allied engineers had foreseen such measures. Intricate networks of pressure-dampening channels and reinforced vault doors lay between the surface and the subterranean chambers. The ground assaults found only dead ends guarded by heavily armed defenders. Some Targan squads ventured deep into winding corridors only to discover cunning traps, collapsible passageways, and deadfall pits. Within the labyrinth, hidden plasma turrets decimated them. The entire complex was a deadly puzzle built to devour would-be invaders. Throughout the battle, the defenders coordinated flawlessly. The fortress's command center was staffed by men and women who had grown up in these tunnels, intimately familiar with every corridor. They monitored planetary scans, adjusting the energy shield's frequency to counter Targan weapons. There, in the heart of the moon, a hush of tense concentration reigned. Engineers rerouted power from non-essential systems to keep railguns firing at maximum capacity. Medical teams stood ready, treating injuries as best they could within the cramped underground infirmaries. And though the fortress endured repeated impacts that caused the walls to rumble, each carefully layered section of rock absorbed the blast with resolute determination. Days passed, and the Targan admirals recognized this was no minor base. Their supply lines stretched thin. Morale among their crews began to falter under the moon's unyielding barrage. Adding to their woes, unrelenting precision strikes eliminated their logistical craft, severing essential cargo shipments of fuel and weapons. The Targan armada tried rotating ships in and out of the defensive perimeter, but each battered vessel that withdrew left another vulnerable one to face the fortress's fury. Communication attempts with the fortress yielded only silence. Humanity had made its stand, and the Targans realized that to break it, they would have to commit every last resource. An audacious plan emerged among the Targan elite. Deploy multiple planetary drills in a concerted effort to puncture the fortress's foundations. Swarms of drones escorted the massive drills to the moon's surface. They managed to secure a limited zone for landing, establishing a perimeter bristling with advanced siege equipment. For a time, it seemed they might succeed. Crews started digging, operating their monstrous machines with feverish devotion, but the moon's defenders were prepared for precisely such a tactic. One by one, the drills disappeared into colossal pits that caved in from well-rigged explosives, turning the Targan siege engines into twisted wrecks. Automated defenders emerged in surgical strikes, neutralizing the Targan perimeter and leaving behind husks of metal where drills had once roared. The humans carefully rationed their own resources. Every bit of ammunition was used with razor-sharp precision, every volley timed to maximum effect, ensuring no waste. Still, cracks did begin to show in the fortress. Certain sections buckled under the constant pounding. Some defenders lost their lives in the deeper tunnels when targeted Targan blasts caused partial cave-ins. Through it all, the morale among the defenders never faltered. In their singular purpose, they found strength. The knowledge that the rest of the allied human worlds depended on them fueled their unwavering resolve. Entire families had staked their lives in the labyrinth of corridors, forging generations of fortress dwellers, ready to fight for a future beyond this place. A final attempt at infiltration came in the dead of a moon's night cycle. The Targans deployed specialized infiltration units trained in stealth and sabotage. Under heavy jamming of the defenders' sensors, these elite commandos penetrated an outlying hangar entrance. They moved silently, dispatching a few unsuspecting guards before rigging a major airlock to blow. For a moment, fate gave them the advantage. The sabotage would have exposed a key corridor leading directly toward the fortress's power core. But in their haste, the Targans overlooked an innocuous camera system disguised as a simple light fixture. Within minutes, alarms blared, and heavily armed security teams descended upon them. A firefight erupted in the claustrophobic tunnels. The Targans fought savagely, knowing they were close to striking a decisive blow, but the defenders were prepared. When the dust cleared, the infiltration force lay sprawled in the red glow of emergency lights, leaving the fortress still breathing and secure. Across the system, the battered Targan fleet hovered in beleaguered formation. Their casualties were severe. Supplies ran dangerously low. The Empire, once supremely confident, now succumbed to doubt. Rumors circulated among starship crews that the fortress was unassailable, that some supernatural force guarded its labyrinth. Even the High Command struggled to find a credible plan to continue the assault. In a desperate gamble, a Targan admiral proposed a direct collision course. Sacrifice a portion of the fleet by ramming their largest capital ships through the shield. But the cost, in lives and material, was deemed beyond reckless, and internal disagreements threatened the unity of the Targan leadership. Meanwhile, news of the moon's heroic defense finally reached distant Allied colonies. Reinforcements, small at first, trickled through the star lanes. Nimble corvettes and frigates arrived just beyond sensor range. Using cunning maneuvers, they managed to appear without triggering a massive Targan counterattack, picking off isolated Empire vessels. Over time, the noose tightened around the besieging Targan forces as their supply ships came under repeated ambush. Though the fortress itself did most of the heavy lifting, these Allied skirmishes chipped away at the Empire's foothold. The tension reached a boiling point. Either the Targans would have to retreat or be annihilated in the crossfire of an enemy they had gravely underestimated. As standoffs stretched on, the Targan commanders saw the writing on the wall. Their attempts had cost them dearly, and the fortress remained indomitable. Surrounded, cut off, fearful of losing more warships, the Targan fleet began a haphazard withdrawal. In small groups, they initiated jump sequences that would take them back to more secure sectors. The few Targan survivors on the lunar surface had no hope of evacuation. Some surrendered, while others simply vanished in the cratered wasteland, preferring to hide rather than face capture. For the Empire's top brass, retreat was an unacceptable disgrace, but losing the rest of their fleet would have been a monumental blow from which they might never recover. When the final Targan battleship vanished into hyperspace, the defenders on the moon scarcely believed it. Months of brutal combat had exacted a toll both physical and emotional. Subterranean passageways still echoed with the faint rumble of structural stress. In the command center, an eerie calm replaced the frantic shouting, the only sound the hiss of decompression from battered ventilation systems and the beeping of damage alarms. Many of the defenders stared at their consoles in shock, unsure whether to hope that victory had truly arrived. Then the cheering began, first tentative and then sweeping through the fortress like a tidal wave. They had done it. They had repelled the unstoppable Targan Empire. Exhausted and wounded, the defenders tended to their casualties and began the long process of rebuilding. Days turned to weeks as engineers worked around the clock to shore up compromised sections of the fortress. The Allies dispatched relief ships to deliver fresh supplies, medical aid, and new equipment on Earth. And throughout scattered colonies, news of the fortress's unbelievable feat spread like wildfire, galvanizing other oppressed worlds to challenge the Targan dominion. No longer was the moon just a coded grid reference in some star chart. It was now a symbol of defiance, living proof that the Empire's might could be halted. Across the sprawling corridors and under rocky ceilings that had borne witness to epic struggles, children learned the fortress's story from elders who had experienced the siege firsthand. They heard how unity and careful planning had toppled the Empire's arrogance. Families mourning lost loved ones found solace in knowing their sacrifices had saved countless others. Pilgrims began to arrive from other human worlds, guided through the labyrinthine corridors to pay tribute. Some carried shards of starship wreckage, offering them as tokens of gratitude and remembrance. Grassroots movements and alliances blossomed, fostering a renewed spirit of cooperation among distant colonies once resigned to fear. Despite the staggering triumph, caution lingered. The Targan Empire was wounded, not destroyed. The fortress had given humanity breathing room, a moment to gather strength and forge new alliances. Plans started to form for an expanded perimeter, supported by robust sensor networks and more advanced orbital defenses. If the Targans eventually returned in force, the fortress would be even more prepared. Scientists, emboldened by recent successes, conducted feverish research into next-generation shielding and energy weapons. Engineers dreamed of turning the entire planetary system into a fortified haven. Political leaders spoke of settlement expansions, envisioning a day when the moon might host thriving communities above ground. rather than only in underground chambers of steel and stone. Yet at the heart of the fortress, beyond the layers of armor and labyrinths, a profound realization took hold. The victory stemmed not just from technology or cunning tactics, but from the unwavering determination of those who refused to submit. Families who had uprooted their lives, soldiers who had sacrificed everything, and settlers who saw only rock and dust, yet vowed to build a future there. This collective willpower had shaped the moon into a living bulwark. Even in the fortress's battered corridors, the defenders stood unbroken. Their story transcended species or borders, becoming a testament to hope in the face of overwhelming odds. As reconstruction efforts continued, humanity's defenses across the galaxy rose in parallel. Even on the once quiet worlds, citizens volunteered for training to protect their newfound sense of possibility. Pitch-black asteroid bases, remote outposts, and ephemeral starports, every corner became a prospective fortress. The euphoria of victory merged with a meditative caution. For the Targon threat still loomed, and yet, one truth shone brilliantly. The unyielding fortress on that once-ignored moon had proved that the unthinkable was possible. Rising from desolation, it had held fast against a colossal empire. In doing so, it reshaped the destiny of countless worlds that dared to imagine liberation. In the crisp, thin air on the moon's surface, dust motes drifted in the feeble light of distant stars. Under that weary yet proud sky, crews worked in shifts to salvage damaged railgun platforms and to bury fallen soldiers, Targon and human alike. The corridors reverberated with the subdued, triumphant energy. There were moments of private mourning, yet also flickers of hope, as young and old came together to carve out a new life. Sometimes one could almost swear the moon itself seemed changeless, hostile, less barren now that people walked its battered terrain with confidence. And though the Targon Empire still lurked beyond charted space, the defenders held a profound resolve. If another invasion ever darkened the horizon, they would be ready. The fortress would stand, and with it, humanity's unbreakable spirit.